Hello, this is Tom Goodwin at Positive Vibes Enterprise. The subject today is spiritual intuition, um, and it and when you're in the spiritual field, like I am, intuition plays a very strong role because the spiritual senses, the senses that science tends to ignore, the psychic senses, um, are what tune you in to what's happening on the spiritual level. And if you're not tuned in on the spiritual level, um, of course you're not going to be able to understand um, things other than what science can tell you about the universe. And it's not all physical. The world's not all physical. It does have a spiritual level. And that's why I'm here, because that's where my focus is, on the spiritual. Now, to give you an example why intuition is so important, when I push myself to the edge, like I did today when I was doing my running, and also when I did my dumbbell swing, when I was pushing the edge physically, um, the only way I can get away with that is to have a real strong sense of how hard I can push myself. Like when I was running, I got a pain in the left side of my chest. And then people will say, well, that's dangerous. Um, Maybe you shouldn't push yourself so hard. Well, I'm a spiritual pioneer. I have no choice. I have to push the edge and I have to get away with it. So I have to develop real good intuition to sense where the edge is. And one of the reasons I have such good intuition is I've pushed the edge so many times in my life that I've gotten a sense for where it's at. And that helps to develop your intuition, but you also have to use certain techniques to enhance your intuition. And that's why I developed all these meditative techniques that I have, my meditative walking, and why I do the the dumbbell swings. And I have developed the breathing techniques that I have developed that that are different than the usual meditative breathing technique in that they tend to be very rapid fire, really fast. And you may say, well, you shouldn't hyperventilate. Well, all meditation to me is hyperventilation. It's a controlled type of hyperventilation. It's always dangerous to do anything that is different, that's outside the box, so to speak, especially when it comes to the physical, because the body can get in danger if it's not used to doing something. And the same thing with meditation. The type of meditation I do is that you have to train yourself to get used to it. Just like with the running that I do, you have to train yourself to get used to it. If you jump into something you're not used to and your body hasn't adjusted to it, there's a danger involved. And you need intuition to even do that type of thing. So what I mean is, it's sort of like the meditation. You do the meditation, and the meditation gives you intuition, and then the intuition allows you to go even further with the meditation and do so safely. But you always have to have that side of you that's paying attention to the fact that you can't get away with everything. You have to be careful. And being careful is as intense as you do things, you have to be careful. That's the balance you have to have. And if you're not careful enough, you will hurt yourself. But you can have that focus on being careful and focus on your intuition to keep you safe, and you can get away with a lot. But that doesn't mean when I get a pain in the left side of my chest that I just ignore it. It means that I don't react to it that extremely, especially since I've dealt with it before. What I do is I slow down a little bit. Today I stopped because it was at the end of my run, so that saved me the trouble. But I have in the past slowed down a little bit, and the pain went away, or the pain got less, and I could keep going. And I got away with it. And one of the things that I found when I pushed the edge physically, like I did today, is that when I get really fatigued afterwards, I have to be really careful. The fatigue state is where my heart can get in trouble because I am neurologically different. I don't have the best finer motor skills. And I think that's related to my limited visual memory, which makes me different. I'm just unique neurologically. And so when I get in a fatigue state, I have to do my meditative breathing, and I've done that in the past when I pushed myself hard. I have a lot of experience using meditative breathing to steady my heart, make sure the rhythm does not get messed up and get me into trouble. And so I've had to use my intuition to survive because I've had to push the edge to survive. And I'm 65 years old, and I'm in pretty good shape. So I have survived pretty well. Um, so, and one of the things about developing intuition, of course, does well when you're pushing the edge. If you're in a crisis, intuition helps you a lot. And um, when you're developing spiritual theories, you have to have that intuition or that spiritual sense, so you know how things actually work in the spiritual. That you're tuned into it. And a lot of people, I would say, frankly, in our society, are not very well tuned in spiritually. That's why we have so many problems in this world and why things are so messed up. So we need more people to develop their intuition so they have better judgment and they can sense how to find out what the right balance is in order to solve problems, to not, be able to see the whole picture and not get too one-sided in their perspective. And often people get very one-sided and self-righteous, so you have to watch out for that. Diet plays a role, and with intuition helps you to figure out what is the best diet for you. And when you figure out the best diet for you, in return, it will help you to develop your intuition even further, because how well you're doing physically, how well your brain is operating has a lot to do with how well your intuition can develop. Because the spiritual capabilities one has is in the brain. It's the emotional center, the sleep center of the brain is very much connected to the spiritual. There's a spiritual physical connection. That's why training counts. If you get rid of the body and your spirit has no body, it cannot train, and it cannot do the meditative techniques I have. So therefore, to me, you're not going to be able to do an awful lot, because you just don't. You have to put in work and effort to get results, and you have to be in a physical environment. And then the brain is very vital to that physical, to you being able to function well in the physical environment. You cannot discount the brain or the brain function and the fact that emotions and feelings, which power the spiritual, are in the brain. They may not be all, they may be spread out into a whole lot of different areas, but there's an area of the brain that you focus on when you're asleep or you meditate, somewhere between the eyes, and you'll feel that, you'll sense that, and that's the spiritual part of the brain, and that can be developed and become really strong, and then you can have strong passion, strong feeling, and it will show in your voice. It will be able to inspire other people too, because emotion powers the spiritual, and people are affected by emotion, especially when it's well directed and it's positive. So diet counts a lot, and then you have to figure out which one works for you well. My diet is very low in fat and doesn't have an awful lot of protein, has enough, because its basic staple is oatmeal. And I do eat a lot of cooked greens, and I can eat fruits and other vegetables, and I do take vitamin and mineral supplements. So, and I mean, you have to use whatever will enhance your well-being on the physical level, especially when you're training as hard as I do. Even the meditative training exercises are rough on the body, are stressful on the body. So good diet makes a big difference when it comes to that. Now, if you don't have intuition well developed, then you really have to depend on the medical profession an awful lot, and they're conservative, for a reason, because when they're dealing with somebody, they have to think of the lowest common denominator, the person without any intuition, and then they have to tell them everything, really carefully so they don't get into trouble. When you use your intuition, you can do things, you can get away with a lot of things that science would be afraid of. That because science is trying to just stay on the things that are the regular senses, the non-intuitive senses deal with. and it just can't understand enough. A lot of science can't. Some understand the spiritual better than others, but a lot of scientists do not understand that. And in the medical profession, of course, the spiritual and intuition need to play a stronger role in order for people to be healthy, because it's a combination of the physical and the spiritual that makes help people to function at their best. So the science and the spiritual need to work together, especially in fields that have a human factor, and emotions and feeling play a strong role in it. Um, Now I've developed an astrology system. So I've developed spiritual theories that help me that have developed as a result of intuition, that not only that have resulted from intuition, but it enhanced my intuition because they enhanced my spiritual programming, which helped me to be able to figure out, interpret what I'm picking up intuitively. So it always seems to go back and forth like a seesaw, where you develop something and develop something else, which in turn developed the other side again. So it goes back and forth, one side developing the other side, and the other side developing the other side, like a seesaw back and forth. That happens a lot. So your intuition develops your spiritual theories, and your spiritual theories develop your intuition, and your intuition in turn develops your spiritual theories. And your training techniques are what develop your intuition, and your intuition helps you to develop better training techniques. So it's a very interesting way things operate. Now, the things that can harm your intuition are the various addictions and unhealthy habits that people have that are pleasurable, but that do not serve your purpose very well. And the more hedonistic a society is, the less virtually effective they will be, the more problems that they will have, and the more they will have to rely on science, because when the spiritual isn't working, then science becomes the replacement, and then science can be overplayed and be put on a pedestal because it doesn't have enough competition. So that's why the spiritual is so important, and then technology and so forth can cause so many troubles, so many problems because of the power that's behind it, and the dangers that are behind it if it goes wrong. So we need our intuition to be developed a lot further. And I developed the astrology system. It just, to me, that I've developed is just a formula that helped me that help spiritual theories and test them. And if my astrology system works on an awful lot of people, which I believe it does, then it will sort of like be proof that my spiritual theories are effective, because the proof is in the result, and I'm very much into getting results. And so many things in this world are a fine line that you have to be careful about. And the spiritual, a lot of times you have to be balancing on a fine line. It can be really tricky at times when you're dealing with all these variables and so forth, and figuring out how to balance them. It can be tricky. Human relationships can be very tricky. And if you don't understand they're tricky, if you think they're simple, you're going to get into a lot of trouble, because um, simple solutions do not work very well for complicated situations, and often in life things are complicated and not the simplest. A lot of times people think the spiritual should be really simplistic. Well, you make it too simplistic, it won't interface with reality of life very well, and it has to interface with life, and life is not always that simple. Life often has a lot of complexity, so the spiritual has to be able to handle complexity, and one has to have the intuition to help you handle complexity. And when it gets really complex, you need an awful lot of intuition. When you're pushing the edge and it's really complex, and that's when you really need to have your spiritual senses, which intuition is a pretty well. So in my astrology system does individualize the spiritual to quite an extent. And that's what tends to be lacking in a lot of religions and even an educational system, where we tend to have a one size fits all. You all got to do the same thing. And I've always been unique, so I developed the astrology system to help me to understand my uniqueness. And you understand your uniqueness, then you can understand what's outside of yourself a lot better, because you understand where you are, where your energy is, the more you understand where your energy is, the more you can understand what energy is outside of yourself, and that really hones in your intuition. So that's why the astrology system is important that I've developed. So the subject today has been spiritual intuition, um, and hopefully I have covered this subject to the degree that people are satisfied. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is Positive Vibes Enterprise. Thank you so much for watching.